ticked off. I think we're kind of the greatest hits of the Democrat Party.
Senate Majority Leader Scott Fitzgerald says Republicans will have to create their own budget. Milwaukee County Sheriff Ernal Lucas says his department won't hold people for immigration and customs enforcement and won't notify the federal agency when it has suspects in jail. He also won't be turning over information to ICE without a warrant. Lucas says his focus will be on incarcerating criminals, not law-abiding citizens. And the man accused of killing a Milwaukee Department of Public Works employee last month has pleaded not guilty. 30-year-old Taryn Claiborne was on the run for 2 weeks before he was arrested. Police say he was behind the wheel in the hit-and-run death of DPW worker Brian Rodriguez. This is Wisconsin Radio Network.
Why was the basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling on it.
The dad joke. Corny, groan-worthy, but also one of the simplest ways to share a moment with your kids.
What did the buffalo say when he dropped his son off for school? Bye, son.
So take a moment to make your kid laugh, because dad jokes rule. Make your kid laugh today. Go to fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Here's farmer and landowner John Prue.
We purchased the land about 3 years ago, and there was an old farmstead on there with trees. We were going to clear the land so we could farm through it. We thought we knew where the pipe was, so we didn't call to get it located. The work on our property led to the damage of a light crude pipeline. Fortunately, no one was hurt, but it could have been much worse.
Never assume the location or depth of underground lines. Always call 811 or visit clickbeforeyoudig.com before you start work. A message from Operators for Ag Safety campaign.
What does our community need to be well? At BDCH, we bring together the very latest in some of the most advanced medical technology available. But here, real wellness means more. It means understanding your goals for recovery and tailoring our treatment to help you reach them. It means we're committed to your health before you ever walk through our doors. Wellness is more than our state-of-the-art facilities and care. It's our promise to you. Lifelong care for all of us. Visit bdch.com today to learn more.
ARC Dodge County, advocating rights of citizens with disabilities, is announcing 2 scholarships of $1,000 each for an individual entering the field of special education. Applications are open to any high school senior or college student that is a resident of Dodge County and has a grade point of 3.0 or above. Applications are available counselors, and the due date is April 15th. All completed forms should be sent to the ARC Dodge County, P.O. Box 173, Beaver Dam, 53916.
The Fireside Theater in Fort Atkinson presents the most beloved musical of all time.
Just she white, it's just she white.
It's Lerner and Lowe's My Fair Lady.
But let a woman in your life? And Patience hasn't got a chance.
Eliza Doolittle and Henry Higgins are back in the perfect Broadway musical. This fantastic new production has it all. A magnificent cast, breathtaking dancing, lavish costumes, and of course, the unforgettable songs.
She almost makes the day begin.
My Fair Lady will delight and entertain the entire family.
I'm getting married in the morning.
Your ticket to the Fireside includes a superb dinner prepared by award-winning chefs, extraordinary service, a chance to visit their spectacular gift shops, and plenty of free parking. Order your tickets now. Call 800-477-9505 or visit firesidetheater.com. My Fair Lady. You've never seen it like this. Only at the Fireside Theater.
Well, it's something pretty darn cool that we're doing here at WBEV WXRO along with the Tom and Judy Heffron Family Foundation. John Kraft, it is the Luck of the Irish promotion.
Indeed it is. Someone's going to get lucky. In fact, 4 people will get lucky. They're going to award 4 deserving Dodge County families in a special situation or with a special need with a $250 cash award. 4 deserving families.
WBEV WXRO listeners can nominate themselves or someone they know by submitting a 1 to 4 page letter or email, or of course they can go right on dailydodge.com and describe your need and your circumstances.
And the winners will be chosen by a representative of the Tom and Judy Heffron Family Foundation and a representative of the station, WBEV WXRO. Decision of the judges is final. Each winner will be awarded $250 each cash, and there are 4 winners.
I'll tell you what, you can submit yours today at dailydodge.com on the contest page or mail your app to Luck of the Irish, 100 Bill McCullum Way, Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, 53916. They will be judged on March 14th and 15th, so get them in today.
12:38 from AM 1430 WBEV, streaming online at daily.com. It is time now for today's community comment. Here's your host, Craig Warmbold.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon. Welcome to Community Comment. Our guests on Community Comment today with the Beaver Dam Police Department. We want to welcome into the conversation Sergeant Eric Smiedema and Police Chief John Kreitziger. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
This Tuesday will be the one-year anniversary of an incident that made national, if not international, headlines, and that is the explosion and subsequent controlled burn of the Village Glen Apartment 109 apartment building. Now, that happened after a young man named Benjamin Morrow apparently was an amateur chemist tinkering with some chemicals, and he killed himself on March 5th. An 11-day ordeal followed that involved multiple agencies, state, federal, local agencies, responding to mitigate the situation. We are going to be basically kind of focusing on that for the program today with Chief Kreitziger and Sergeant Smiedema. We, of course, do want to welcome any of your questions or comments here today. 920-885-4446 is the phone number. If you've got a question or a comment for us here on Community Comment. I would also encourage you to, if you'd like to submit something in writing, you can go to dailydodge.com under the News tab, submit a news tip, and we'll get that right here on Community Comment today. Also, if you're listening to us on AM 1430 WBEV and you do have internet access, please feel free to check out dailydodge.com. We are streaming in audio and video today. So that being said, without further ado, here let's get into the in this conversation. Here we are at the 1 year mark. What are your thoughts when you look back at an incident like this that many law enforcement and fire personnel have said was probably the biggest incident that they've ever handled in their careers? What goes through your mind at a time like this?
I guess after it's all done and over, it's just amazed at the number of people that came together and how the community came together and all these agencies came together, how we were able to work together and coordinate the things we did, and the number of agencies that we were able to work together and have this communication. And we have been doing some after-action planning, and everything that we did, we're trying to always look to see what we can do to do better. But overall, the help of the community, everything the residents did, everything that I look back at it, and I thought the situation went very, very well. And to say that nobody else got hurt or injured, that was quite impressive.
Yeah. And Sergeant Smiedema?
I would say you never want anything like that to happen, but it definitely gave us a lot of experience, from our officers to our management to our relationship working with the community, all the staffing that we had to do and all the different resources we had to call in. I guess was quite an experience for a smaller town that doesn't deal with this type of stuff, and it just shows that nobody's exempt from this type of thing happening. So it's important that the community knows if you see something, say something. Any tips can help, that this doesn't just happen in big cities, that it can happen in smaller cities as well.
What was what's the takeaway a year later? What have you guys learned from that incident?
I guess I look at it as we in law enforcement are very critical of what we do, and I've looked back at everything that I've done with this incident, and that's what the after action plan, working with Dodge County Emergency Management on the after action plan, is always saying you always think you could do better. You always look at what could we have done different, what could I have done better, what could we as a department have done better. Take away what we've learned, what are some of the positive and negatives, and try to make improvement on it. We hope we never have an incident like this again, and hopefully it's a much smaller scale, but it's still got the basic foundation and the basic things that happen.
So let's walk through that day. It was a Monday afternoon, first Monday in the month of March, right around 1 o'clock that I started to hear sirens, and on a whim I decided to follow them, and Well, Chief, you were the first person I saw over there. I imagine you were among the first people on scene.
Yeah, we were one of the first ones, and just the standing back and seeing the devastation from this explosion alarmed me to even begin with, to see doors and windows and the framing of the apartment complex, just the cracked wood and the doors and all the damage from the distance was just amazing to see. And, you look at the pictures from a distance, it doesn't look as bad, but when you got up closer, just that damage to other apartments and some of the walls and the drywall, and it was just amazing that caused that kind of damage.
And I would say, as a civilian, it seemed pretty unassuming, which is why I'm not in law enforcement or a detective or anything like that. The wall was a little bowed out from the outside. You could see that there was some broken glass and whatnot, but I imagine that was a very different situation inside than what people were seeing from the outside.
Yeah, some of the lower apartments and side apartments, obviously you could see the walls were damaged and ceilings and everything else. The actual structural part of it you could see that was damaged.
That was damaged. You guys have probably been busy here in this last week with open records requests from multiple media outlets requesting the information that you have on this here a year later.
Yeah, we're not any farther than we were 2 weeks after the incident, so we felt it was time to release it. I made that decision that it's time to release it, and we didn't get any more tips. We have nothing else to follow up on, no other investigations. We've been in contact constantly with the FBI, and they have gotten nothing every time we talk to them. So we felt it was time to close the case and move on.
When was the case officially closed?
Just recently, within the last couple of weeks.
Just in the last couple of weeks, and from 2 weeks after the incident until a couple of weeks ago, nothing.
Nothing has changed. No new leads. Most of all the investigation was done because at that time we wanted the motive. We wanted to find some answers, and we were looking for answers, and we kept digging for answers, and we couldn't find them. And we were hoping that after a year, we were hoping that almost a year that something would come forward and we get some more leads that would help us to follow up on it. But we never received anything else. So.
920-885-4446 is the phone number if you've got a question or a comment for John Kreitzinger, the police chief here in Beaver Dam, or Sergeant Eric Smeedema. We'll go to the phones and say good afternoon. Welcome to Community Comment.
Good afternoon, and gentlemen, thank you for being there and answering these questions. My question is, obviously some of the things you've been talking about, Beaver Dam being a smaller community and all, when something like that happened and it was national news, do you have a delegated information officer, and what other duties would that person have? And then when you have all these national outlets and and FBI agents and outside law enforcement coming in, who directs all that? Where you go to sleep, where you go to stay, how close you can be to the building? That organization, is it something you have an SOP on, and would all small communities have that? I mean, just amazing. I hope you have a chance to talk a little bit about that.
Well, thank you very much for that call.
I'm going to hang up. Thanks, guys, for being there again.
Well, the first thing about the information officer, usually in our department right now, we have PIO, which is Lieutenant Gebhardt. He usually does most of our public information releases and interviews and so forth. And he's also in charge of the investigative portion of our department for a lot of cases. So what I do for most of the cases that are under investigation, so I don't jeopardize that investigation, I usually allow him to talk about that case and give information about that case. So he usually gets assigned most of the release of information when it comes to the investigation. And a big scale like this, myself, I always have to be in the forefront in getting that information out. And there only can be one person that's usually delegated to do that responsibility. If you have more, then there's miscommunication. But what really helped me with this one is I had, when the FBI and others come in and ask for what can we do, what help can we give you, one of mine was, can I get a PIO? Can I get someone that can help me put this stuff together and gather all this information and get it together? So when you have something this big, even in a small community, there's the FBI was more than willing to provide me with a PIO. The Wisconsin Emergency Management was also able to provide me with a
PIO. So that helps me. What they do is they gather that information together for me, and they all put it together for me, and then I review it and discuss what things we need to change or what I'd like to see in there and what I think should be taken out based on the information I'm getting from my investigator, who at this time would have been Lieutenant Gebhardt. So I would talk to him about what can be, what can't be released. He would confer with the FBI to see what can and can't be released. And the PIO's responsibility is to help me put that all together and get it together from the information they're receiving on a large scale. So for this incident, to have two PIOs next to me and then I be the lead spokesperson worked out very, very well. And like I say, most small investigations or other investigations, Lieutenant Gebhardt is in the contact person. He has spoke a lot about the investigation, and most of the time when there's a lot of questions about the investigation, he does most of the speaking. But when it comes to an incident like this, it takes, you have to know, what I always look for is who's in charge from the FBI. I always look for one person who's got to be in charge and person. We do a lot of incident command training, and you got to have one person that's in charge, because if you have too many, this just causes confusion as to what the information is and how things are going to work, and it's their responsibility then to disseminate that. So when the FBI is there, I'm looking for who's that lead person, Wisconsin Emergency Management, who's that person, the bomb squad, who's that, and that way I have a contact person that always can be in contact with. And then what you have to do is you have to bring those people together into a debriefing or briefing to discuss what you have and what your plans are, and then it's their responsibility then to trickle that down to their people as to what our plan is. In this case, since I was the chief, I had to make the ultimate decision at the end. It was basically my responsibility. Once the FBI and the bomb squad and everybody came together and said, this is what we plan on doing, this is what we need you to approve, and then I would have to approve that. But you rely on a lot of help from a lot of people getting that information together. And to making decisions like how close and you could be in all those decisions, that comes from people that are smart, far smarter than I am, and they base that decision off of a lot of things that are going on. For example, this day, first of all, we didn't know really what we had. We've never had this in the country before, except for one place out in California, and it was a house, and this was an apartment. So everybody's scrambling to, first of all, figure out what we have, what it is, and we always do the minimum perimeter for now until we know differently. And as we found out differently what we thought it was, the perimeter kept expanding and kept changing. So to decide how close we get, we did the minimum. We have to stay out of the building for now. The only thing we were able to do that day, we were able to get some pictures when we were initially up there. And then pictures got forwarded all over to say to experts in this field, what do we have? What do you think this is? Based on what we were seeing at the scene. So they were able to tell us that it was TATP. So then it starts to go, how much, how big of an explosion are we going to have? And then we start getting perimeter set up and start the evacuation process as to, we believe we have this, we believe we have this amount, we believe that we need this type of a perimeter. And then things started, which it did that day, started expanding out farther as we went along.
I spent the morning going through the materials that were, and thank you, caller, for that question, going through the materials that your office released through those open records requests that, again, I imagine you've been inundated with from news outlets around the state. And, you know, there's a few things that jumped out at me that those first on scene noticed a can of acetone on the stairs. Antifreeze was in the fridge, which was partially open from the explosion. There was a strong chemical odor noted. When you look back in retrospect, do you feel that maybe you shouldn't have had law enforcement personnel so close to that situation initially?
Well, we know what we know now, and if we, based on what we know now, we maybe shouldn't have, but how are we going to know that information, and how did we know what we were getting ourselves into? I guess every situation, we put our lives on the line every day at situations, so lots of times we don't know until we get into that situation. Most of us were probably thinking this was some type of a meth lab maybe, or we really didn't know what we were dealing with, and most of the time once it explodes, it's done, and you know, you don't understand what you're having, what you got. Once we were able to we knew we had to put ourselves in that position to figure out what we had. Once we got those pictures, that gave us a good answer as to, hey, we need to start getting out of here. We need to start setting up perimeters and so forth. So yeah, that's a tough situation where a lot of officers go into situations. You know, look at 911. We could look back and say, boy, there shouldn't have been a lot of people that should have been where they were. And the cops run to things, and we get attracted to figure out what's going on to save people's lives. Yeah, later on, 911 and a lot of emergencies, we could say maybe that close, or maybe we wouldn't have evacuated people. Maybe we would have forgot people and left them in there if we didn't get into that situation and see what we had and see what was evacuated and what wasn't evacuated. So we put our lives on the line every day. So, you know, we try to be as careful and as safe as we can.
Do you have you heard of any of your personnel or any other emergency responders suffering any adverse health effects from exposure to any of the chemicals that may have been there?
No, I haven't, but like you were pointing out, you know, some of the things that you had seen at the scene, I always say sometimes just one of those antifreeze, you kind of look and go, okay, whatever, it's antifreeze. But as you things, and that's what started to grab our attention. You start to see all these things in the apartment. You start to see the glassware. You start to see the stove open. You start to see the refrigerator full of chemicals. You start to see these labels. You start to see all this stuff, and you start to put that all together into a puzzle to try and figure out what you have. And based on what you, like you said, you've seen, that's when we figured out this is what we got. This is what's going on.
How early was it that you had an idea that it might be TATP that was at play here?
I think it was sometime when the bomb squad had gotten there, and sometime after these pictures were floated around to different. I mean, these pictures were going all the way out to Virginia. I mean, they were going to some of the best experts in the country, because we didn't know what was going on and what we had there, and. It didn't, the first initial, we knew it was just odd and it was strange. We just didn't know it was TATP. But at some point, several hours later, we did, because we had to expand the evacuation or farther. And that's when we figured that's what we might have. And we were right from the beginning. And we were pretty well on, because they didn't tell us that it was any other chemical but TATP. So we figured we were pretty close since the initial stages.
So the Beaver Dam Police Department arrived on scene. What were the jurisdictional boundaries? The Beaver Dam Police Department was handling this investigation on a local level. The FBI was handling it on a kind of a broader scope. What was that balance there?
Well, usually it depends on the magnitude of the situation. If this would have been some type of a terrorist situation, Homeland Security would have come in and played a little bit more role in this case. But they didn't, because we didn't feel that it was that. I think it ultimately comes down to that jurisdiction ultimately making the decision, and that's what the FBI said when they get there, when the bomb squad get there. They're looking for who's in charge, who's the incident commander, and that's who they're looking for. So ultimately, it comes down to myself making a decision on some of the questions that they have. They provide, for example, the FBI has got a huge intelligence. They just have the resources, and they have a lot of intelligence. They were very good at providing a lot of intelligence in a short period of time. So we basically figure out who's going to handle what and who's going to do what portion of it, and who's in charge.
And then locally, when you have to make decisions about who's in charge, can you give us some insight into maybe why a county agency didn't step forward, or the Wisconsin State Patrol? And what was the relationship like with for example, local county officials?
It was great to have all the local help from the county, the Sheriff's Department, Emergency Management. It was all great to have that. It's any time you can get them resources. Usually what it comes down to is the city usually handles things themselves and uses their resources they can handle. And once the situation gets to the point where we cannot handle it, then we reach out to the county. There has to be a hierarchy to follow when you have when you need resources. And, I can't just go right straight to the federal government and ask them for help, or for the state. We usually have, unless it's state patrol with traffic, but otherwise we usually go through the protocol. So Beaver Dam realized that we have the personnel. We realized there was more here than what we could handle. Then we involved the county. The county resources come in and help us. Once we felt this was bigger even than the county could, we usually get a hold of the state. Sometimes the county gets a hold of the state. So, and then after that, some of those folks usually get a hold of the federal government to help them.
I've been referencing the records that were released to the media following the conclusion of the investigation in the last couple of weeks. Can you tell us a little bit about what you were able to release to the media, and more specifically, what you weren't able to? Obviously, without getting into the specifics, but generally speaking, what you're not able to release to the media in a situation like this.
The only things that we're not able to release to the media is some of the autopsy stuff, some of the autopsy examinations that were done, some of the this is obviously a huge explosion. Obviously, we're not going to release any photographs of the body. It's just too gross to be able to do that. Some other confidential information, that witnesses or addresses, phone numbers, date of births, all that personal stuff gets redacted, what we call it. That's where you take the black line and you mark everything out that you don't think they can have. And that usually comes down to personal information. And what we have done is the city has an attorney that helped me make sure what we could and couldn't release, or what we shouldn't release. And there's always some case law that kind of regulates some of what you can and can't release, but mostly it comes down to the personal information and some of the pictures of the body.
I've been reviewing a lot of that information. I've got some questions to continue with you guys along those lines. I'll leave one of the things that jumped out at, well, maybe not jumped out at me, but I found an interesting tidbit here as we go into the break that I'll mention. This is some internal dialogue with the landlord who rented the apartment to Benjamin Morrow, and just kind of noting the meeting with him and the background check that they did. Applicant Benjamin Morrow, I find nothing on the online court records website, hasn't been in his job very long, wants out of Madison, and then the notes conclude by saying, very nice guy.
I think that's pretty well summed it up for most of the investigation, and most of the time most people felt that way about him, and we never had any concerns or issues with him. We never had any reports or any concerns with him, so yeah. And
when pressed, though, a lot of his neighbors said, well, I think maybe I noticed the smell of mothballs. What does that mean?
Well, when you hear that leaves me in law enforcement to believe that they were trying to cover up something or hide something, because that's what you use them for. So, for the average person, they probably didn't realize or understand that, and sometimes they don't make that connection. It's mothballs. It's just like the antifreeze, no big deal. But you start putting these things together, you start going, wow, that's what he was doing. If someone reported it to us, I guess we probably would have questioned him to find out why he smelled like. I don't know how much farther it would have went. It would have based on probably what he would have told us, because we didn't have a lot to go on. But after the fact, yeah, now we can all look back and go, yeah, and somebody that probably smelled that probably felt bad that they didn't call the police.
920-885-4446 is the phone number if you've got a question for our guests from the Beaver Dam Police Department. You could also submit a written question online. Go to dailydodge.com and submit a news tip. There's a bar for that right at the top of the page. Our guests here are Sergeant Eric Smiedema and Chief John Kreitziger with the Beaver Dam Police Department. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
On your mark, ready, set, bingo! You could win $500. It's time to pull up the card table, set out the markers, put on the sweatband, and play Radio Bingo. Here on WBEV at 1:35 p.m. every Monday through Friday. WBEV awards a daily cash prize of $25. But if you cover all the numbers on your card in the first 50 numbers called, the cash prize is $500. Multiple winners divide the money equally. Get your bingo cards at these Beaver Dam locations: Rechex Food Pride, Get Fit Health Club, and Eat Anita's Cakes, Catering, and Cafe. Find your bingo cards in Columbus at Larson House Assisted Living, NWS Ag Center on Temkin Road. Cards can also be had at Randolph Health Services and Assisted Living, Horicon Hardware Hank, Leroy Meats in Fox Lake, and Wilpon Piggly Wiggly. Visit any of these locations for your free bingo cards, then play Radio Bingo. You could win $500 cash every Monday through Friday at 1:35 p.m. on AM 1430 WBEV.
Do you love pets and pasta? Frosty's Foster's Animal Rescue of Beaver Dam is having a dine-out night with Benvenitos of Beaver Dam. Come enjoy a meal at Benvenitos on Tuesday, March 19th, between 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Just mention Frosty's Foster's to your server, and they will donate 20% of all sales for that day. Frosty's Foster's is a non-for-profit animal rescue group. We rescue animals from high-risk kill shelters and get them adopted to loving homes. Hope to see you there.
Kathy knows that for Vita Park Eye Associates, it's the team that makes the difference in patient care.
The people at Vita Park were wonderful. I mean, they're very professional, taking great care to do all the tests and the measurements correctly. The procedure was just as Dr. Wilkins explained it to me. The follow-up is great. The next day, they wanted to make sure I didn't have any pain, that I didn't have any infection. They made sure it was following the directions as far as the drops that I was using. Before I had the procedure, I could not read a book unless I took off my glasses and held it about 4 inches from my face. Now I can read a book. I can drive without glasses, which is wonderful. I would definitely recommend Vita Park Eye Associates. The procedure is something that you don't need to be afraid of. The results are amazing.
Learn more at vitaparkeye.com. Partially covered by Medicare, results may vary.
The Fireside Theater in Fort Atkinson presents the most beloved musical of all time.
Just you want, ingredients, just you want.
It's Lerner and Lowe's My Fair Lady.
But let a woman in your life, and Patience hasn't got a chance.
Eliza Doolittle and Henry Higgins are back in the perfect Broadway musical. This fantastic new production has it all. A magnificent cast, breathtaking dancing, lavish costumes, and of course, the unforgettable songs.
She almost makes the day begin.
My Fair Lady will delight and entertain the entire family.
I'm getting married in the morning.
Your ticket to the Fireside includes a superb dinner prepared by award-winning chefs, extraordinary service, a chance to visit their spectacular gift shops, and plenty of free parking. Order your tickets now. Call 800-477-9505 or visit firesidetheater.com. My Fair Lady. You've never seen it like this. Only at the Fireside Theater.
105 from AM 1430 WBEV. Beaver Dam. Take advantage of the Countryside Ford Quick Lane Works package. Oil change, tire rotation, and free inspection, $39.95. No appointment necessary. Open Monday through Saturday. Countryside Ford, 330 Transit Road, Columbus. Time once again for more of today's community comment. Here is your host, Craig Warmbold.
And our guests are with the Beaver Dam Police Department, Sergeant Eric Smiedema and Police Chief John Kreitziger. The phone number, if you've got a question, is 920-885-4446. That's 885-4446. And you could submit written questions through dailydodge.com. Look for the news tip box on the top of the news page, and we'll be keeping an eye on that if you'd like to submit something there. You could also go to dailydodge.com to stream us in audio and video, or watch back or listen back to today's program. We're talking about incident that unfolded on the first Monday of March in 2018, the explosion and then subsequent controlled burn of Building 109 at the Village Glen Apartments following the discovery of TATP, a chemical so volatile that it did first have to be detonated before that whole building was burned to the ground. It was an 11-day ordeal. But when you have something that happens like this, it's not the only thing that goes on in the city of Beaver Dam, is it?
It is not. I'll just answer that caller's other questions real quick.
Sure.
About where FBI agents and that type of, they obviously stay in hotels in the area. Same for like DCI agents that were coming from a ways away. If they're not within driving distance, they'll stay at a local hotel. As far as an SOP, standard operating procedure, we kind of do it for an explosion, but nothing to this magnitude. You kind of have to adapt to the situation. You have certain procedures to follow, but this was kind of outside of anything that we had dealt with before. Getting back to your question, you still have a city to respond to calls, to domestics, to the neighbor's dogs barking, all of that. So one of my responsibilities and the responsibilities of other supervisors that weren't directly involved with the investigation were staffing. We had a crime scene for that 11 days that we had to protect, and initially we had to have multiple officers there to cover the area. It was a big area, so you had to have somebody on each side to make sure that nobody entered that apartment complex. Obviously there was people that had been living there. You wanted to make sure that nobody came back to try to get anything, just for their safety. Once they ended up putting up a fence around, we were able to scale back how many officers that we needed to protect the scene. But we also needed to keep our minimums on the road for each shift as well. So it's very taxing on our staff. We have 31 sworn officers, to obviously the detective bureau and from the chief, deputy chief, for putting in long hours to begin with. And our regular officers were asked to step up and work 12 plus hours to protect the scene and whatever else, and everybody worked together, and we really didn't have any issues with staffing. Obviously it's a lot of time and it's a lot of hours to put in, but I didn't hear anybody complaining, and everybody did their job to make it go as smooth as possible.
And you had many other incidents during that as well. Were there any major incidents during that time?
We were pretty fortunate. I don't think we had any major incidents. We had a few, but nothing like what was going on, obviously.
920-885-4446 is the phone number if you've got a question or comment for our guests from the Beaver Dam Police Department. We will go to the phones and say good afternoon. Welcome to Community Comment.
Yes, I'm curious. In a situation like this where they had to burn down the building, how does the insurance cover something like this?
Well, we usually don't get involved with the insurance. The only time for like this incident we involve the insurance is because they usually like to send out their own investigators. So we had to work with the insurance company's investigators because obviously we don't want them to jeopardize our crime scene, and obviously we they need to get a job done and they want to know what's going on. So our goal is to fill them in with some information, as long as it didn't jeopardize the investigation. We were able to get them probably a little bit closer to the scene to take photographs that we wouldn't let other people get in. We had a perimeter around there, so we wouldn't let people in, so we escorted the insurance person that wanted to take photos and others in as far as we could, to be able to let them see what they were dealing with and let them know what our plan was. Because initially we had a plan, and then initially we had a different plan, so we let them know what our second plan. And then a lot of the things the insurance company had some concerns about, like, if we have security and safety concerns, we talked to the insurance company, because the fence was a result of the insurance company, because we told them we could not be 100% sure of the liability, and that liability went back on them because that was their property. So they provided the fence and got contact and got the fence up around it to help us with security and to help with their liability. So sometimes we work with the insurance companies a lot because they have an investigator, or they send someone out from the insurance company to get information, as much as information as they can. So we help them as much as we can, because we understand that they have a job to do too, and want to get information and want to get photos and so forth, and they want to know as much as they can about what's going on and what they can do to help. And that was my goal, was to provide them as much as we could to help them and help us. So that was great that the insurance company was great to work with. They were very cooperative. They did get the fence up very quickly, took it down when we wanted it down, put it back up for us very quickly, and they took care of the cost. sometimes some of the cost stuff they could take care of instead of the city taking care of it, because then the city would turn around and build the insurance company anyway. So it was best off that if they could handle some of the issues or concerns that we had without going through the city and using the city's resources, using the city's or the insurance resources, that's very helpful for us as a city.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for that call. Again, 920-885-4446. Just to follow up on that, I know one of the mantras at the time from officials was this is a good example of why those who may be living in an apartment should get rental insurance.
Yeah, very cheap and very. When we had the apartment fire on 3rd Street, it was the same thing. We worked with the insurance company. Actually, we had a state investigator, our detective, and an insurance investigator all working together at one time at that scene. And they could do some things that they need to get done too at those scenes. So yeah, we do work with the insurance guys, especially on any explosion or burn or fire like this. Yeah.
Again, had an opportunity to go through some of the reports and the other information that was assembled and made available to the public. So the incident occurred on a Monday. By Thursday, you were really hoping that you could let everybody back in and be able to reside in their homes once again at Building 109. And then there was a small explosion. Some of the terminology that was used is interesting. I thought the friction-initiated incident with TATP led to the decision for thermal destruction of the building as the new alternative.
Well, that would have been, yeah, we had the first initial explosion, then we had the controlled burn or explosion where we're just trying to explode that area. And then after that, we thought that was enough. We thought we would be good. We thought we got rid of all the volatile material. We thought, okay, we should be good. The FBI felt comfortable with that, and they felt comfortable going back in, but there were some areas, such as where the stove was, and a few areas that they wanted to make sure. They wanted to make sure that they didn't miss anything. We couldn't do a thorough search of that building or that apartment to make sure that we weren't missing anything. So their goal was to go back in there and try and see if there was anything else that didn't explode or if there was other things in there that were of concern. So what they did is they started removing some of the material. Well, they had to shore it up first. We had to get a construction company in there first because it was an upper apartment. So we brought in a construction company and shored up the floor so they could structurally go up there. And then they went up there and started working in there. That's when they were using rakes, when they had a plastic rake, and one of the times from the plastic rake actually blew the time off the rake. And then there was the ringing in the ear from the explosions, and they realized we did not get it all from that control burn, and realized that now we're going to have to go back to plan a different plan. But initially, when we initially had this, they initially told us you may have to burn that whole building down. When we first got information about what we were dealing with, how much we were dealing with, that was their initial plan. The only way to deal with this is most likely, but they were trying not to do that because we understood that we were trying to save the building. We had a lot of personal property that people had in there, and we were trying to have this alternative route. There was all these discussions about taking off the ends with construction material, with construction vehicles, and being able to just maybe burn the middle or just tear down the middle. But they felt any type of friction or any movement just from a rake was enough to cause this explosion, that they felt the FBI did not feel comfortable anymore and said, we're done here. We're not going to do any more. The only way to resolve this now is to burn the whole building.
So by that Friday, there was already internal memos in the Beaver Dam Police Department talking about a burn-in-place operation. But you're saying that as early as it was identified, perhaps that first day, you guys were talking about that
very
possibility.
first day, they had told us, based on what you have and an amount that you have, the only way to deal with it, based on the California House case that they had, that might be the only thing to do. That's what they originally told us. But like I said, we were trying to, we understand that there's a lot of personal property in there. We understand that there's a lot of money, and we also advised the insurance company what we were planning on doing, and that we were trying to save some of that building if we could, and some of the personal property, what we were trying to do.
Excuse me. And perhaps a question here for the Beaver Dam Fire Chief, Alan Mantle, who will actually be on Community Comment on Friday to deliver his Render Safe Operation presentation. And that would be that, did you know at that time the safety concerns that were present when the opportunity came to perhaps let those individuals back in?
Right, and they knew that when they went back in, and when they originally said, it has to, you'd have to burn the material, and they felt that they had done that explosion. They felt they had done that, and they had rid themselves of all the material. That's why they felt comfortable going back in. But obviously, it's such unpredictable material. That's why it's so scary and it's so dangerous, because you don't know what you're going to do with that material and how it's going to react. So.
Did you have an opportunity to speak with anybody in California about the situation that took place there? I believe it was 2010.
Yeah, no, there was others that were on our committee that we did reach out to them, and we're having discussion. I think the fire chief was probably one of them. He was having some contact with some people down in Madison where they just had an explosion the week before too. He was reaching out to some others. I know I didn't, but I know he was.
920-885-4446, the phone number if you've got a question for our guests from the Beaver Dam Police Department. We'll go to the phones and say, good afternoon. Welcome to Community Comment.
Hello, Craig. Is this me?
Yeah, you're on the air.
Oh, thank you. And with all due respect, officers, I am kind of a little bit bugged, because you mentioned, you had to get in county resources to get this whole thing rolling outside of the county. And I was like, well, county resources, who did you call? You called the Humane Society or Social Service Department? What was it? Why is it so hard for you guys to acknowledge and respect our sheriff, Dale Schmidt? If any time you were in any situation and he was on your right side or left side, you would be completely confident that that guy would throw his life down to save you. So set politics aside. And why don't you never even thank them for taking care of, not taking care of, but helping you with the dock situation? He heard about docks that you guys, you couldn't even go into that establishment, and because of fear of your personal safety in docks. So the sheriff set out a plan, and he stopped these people on the way before they got there, and he helped you. Why have you never thanked them for that? Why don't you mention this? You're talking about county resources. Who was the county resource that helped you with this? Why can't you send him a thank you and acknowledge his name? It was a hard-fought election. Set politics aside. Thank him. I'm going to listen off here. I'm sorry, because I am bugged on this.
Could you summarize some of it? I couldn't hear everything.
I was unclear about the docks situation. The caller did seem to indicate that there might be some friction between the Beaver Dam Police Department and Dodge County Sheriff's Office. Could you speak to that?
No, I think this is a team effort. I don't think it's myself or the Beaver Dam Police Department. I think it's a team effort. I think it involves everybody. The sheriff was very helpful with his input and advice. He provided many resources, but also did Dodge County Human Services. I mean, they were there for the victims. Them people were so great. We couldn't have done this without Dodge County Human Services also. There's so many people that we have to thank, and there's so many people that I completely say it's a team effort. It involves everybody that was there. There was all the county resources. Amy Nails was great to work with, and Joe Mahar, just great. The sheriff and everybody that worked with us in the state patrol, they had so many patrol officers that helped us. I thank everybody. I just don't think it's one person or myself or others. I think it's a total team effort. And I think everybody that was there, there's no way we could thank everybody with all the fire departments that were there, all the state air quality control, you name it. There were so many people there that I could not thank them enough. I just look at it as I put everybody into one. I'm going to thank them all and say thank you. We couldn't have done it without you. It's a total team effort, and I thank everyone from the county. And everybody from the county was great. Everybody from the Dodge County Humane Society to you name it,
they were there, and we used them for pets. Everybody was stepped up to the plate, and we didn't. When we called the county resources, nobody said no to us, and they brought us more resources than we needed at times. So I have nothing but to say but thank you to all the county resources as a team.
And thank you for that call. Here in the final minutes of the program, let's fast forward to the controlled burn. It was supposed to take place that following Wednesday, which would have been day 10. It was delayed due to heavy winds. Another question for the fire department over there. But then we came to learn that night, that Wednesday evening, that members of the FBI bomb squad were able to go through the apartment complex and retrieve some of the personal belongings thought to be lost in the controlled burn that would be taking place. Did the delay of the wind help some of those residents get their belongings? If it had taken place on Wednesday, might it have been a different story as far as them being able to retrieve some of those irreplaceable items?
It might have been. It came down to that liability and the responsibility of who is going to take responsibility for that huge decision. It came down when the FBI had left. They felt that the whole building was unsafe, and the only way to deal with this is to burn it down. I think some more information came through, and I think the sheriff had made some contact with a few people, and I think after that point it felt like that maybe they could do some of the ends, but at first the FBI had told me, myself, there was no way they were going to do anything. That was pretty well completed. It was done. They really feel that this is unsafe. The only way to deal with it was to burn it. I think afterwards there was some people that said, hey, well, I've done some more research and maybe we could do some things. Then we had to work some things out with some of the experts that had to go in there, because I think the only way we could have got some of that out is having some of the experts. And we did have the FBI bomb experts were the ones retrieving that, because they knew exactly what this material, the characteristics of this material, and they had a better understanding if they went into those N ones, whether they could get out some of the property. So it was great, and I'll give the sheriff credit for organizing that, because he was the one that I said, hey, my resources are tapped, I don't have any more. He says, I'll take care of it, and he went and dealt with it. He went and he got a trailer, and he got his deputies, and they worked on that. So, there is one situation where he handled that very well, and we needed it, and it was a county resource again. But again, it all comes down to all of us together as a team.
How hard was it to break it to those in those apartments who were going to be losing those items, that they wouldn't be allowed back in those buildings, and what was it like when they were able to learn that maybe there was still some hope for some of their most valuable items?
Yeah, I think for me in this whole thing, when I look back at it, I think the toughest thing for me was when I had to stand up there in front of those people and tell them that we were going to have to burn the property and the building, and they weren't going to get their property back. That was the toughest thing for me, and it was the hardest thing to handle, because we all know what it's like to have personal property, and some of that stuff you cannot replace. It means a lot to you, and to have to tell those people that this was going to happen was very hard for us to do. I think it gave them some hope that we could go back and maybe get some things. That's where I think the sheriff coordinated that to be able to get some of that list of some of the things that they could get and pass it on, so the FBI could get a few things, and they were only limited to a few things. So, yeah, I think that made them feel a little bit better, that maybe we could go in and get a few things that wouldn't be a concern with this material if something happened.
There was, the discovery of white supremacist materials that really got a lot of people talking after this. Can you give us some insight into, have we learned anything more about that here 1 year later?
No, we have not. It was one piece of material. It was only one piece. It's like I was explaining to you before, like the antifreeze was something that we all think it's just antifreeze, but put it together with other pieces, it means more. And it's kind of one of these things where you look at it and you understand it is what it is, but we can't make any connections. We can't connect it to something else, and we can't connect it to any group. We can't connect to where it came from, and we have no other connections to that material. So at this point, it is a piece of material that was found in his apartment. We don't know how he got it. We don't know where it came from. We don't know any connections.
So the case has been closed officially for a couple weeks now. What does that mean if new information comes up? Might you still be ever in contact with the FBI about this? Could there be new developments, do you think?
There always could. In any case, I guess there always could be. Once a case closes, there always could be something that could come up and reinitiate this. But based on conversations with the FBI, they have followed up on every lead and tip, and we have too. Everything is exhausted. So at this time, if we exhausted every lead we have, we don't have anything else. We'd have to wait for a new lead to come up, and yeah, we would investigate it, or we could reopen it. And cases have been reopened many times that are closed for years, and maybe some new technology or some new DNA test will come up of some sort, or some new information will be able to be brought forward that'd help us move forward with it. But at this point, we haven't had any of that.
Have you had an opportunity to speak with any of the residents who were impacted by this lately? Have you spoke with anybody over the last year that was impacted?
Yeah, I spoke to all the residents and all those that were evacuated. I remember going to all the apartments on the Canop, which took a while, and went and thanked them all for their cooperation, because we don't have a mandatory evacuation law in Wisconsin unless the fire chief can give a direct order for safety. But other than that, we don't. So there was a lot of residents were very cooperative and understanding with us. So I needed to get back to those people and thank them. And I went and thanked for their cooperation and thanked them for their understanding and what we all had to go through. And we tried to keep them up to date as much as we could, and that was always hard to do. So I did as many as I could, and if the ones that I couldn't, that weren't there anymore, I left them a thank you card from the police department to thank them for what they did to help us.
You had some difficult situations to make. At one point, it was noted internally that it was mandatory for all the tenants to evacuate, but you cannot physically remove them. 113 Canop was the exception. Use the utmost professionalism should you have to physically remove someone. Those must be very difficult decisions to make as a leader.
Yeah, that was a difficult decision, but we work hard to try to inform them and educate them as to why. And so they make sure that they have as much information as they can, so when they make that decision, they're making an informed decision. So that was kind of important to us, to make sure that they understood why we were asking them. And once they understood the why behind it, most of them were very, very good and very, very cooperative, and we were able to be there for them and be able to have them answer any of their questions, and make sure that we gave them a place to stay and explain some resources that were available that they could have.
Sergeant Smeedema, what would you say that, looking back here at the way everything unfolded and the way the community came to help support those who were displaced in this situation with fundraising and all the other resources that were made available from nonprofits, et cetera, what do you think that says about our community?
It shows how tight-knit the community is. There was so much food and everything else brought to us and the fire department that we could barely eat it all, and we like to eat food. And it just showed all the support, the cards that we got, that people were thinking of us. It just goes back to that, you know, if something bad happens, that you have the support of the community, and people will come out and help and do whatever they can. And all the fundraisers where people raise money for the victims of it, that the people that lost things, just shows what kind of community that we actually live in.
Chief, here in closing, what do you want the community to know here 1 year later about this incident?
I guess if we would ever have something like this again, that we're able to get so many resources to come to this area, and there's so many people that were willing to help. And if we do have another tragedy, which we never would, that there are those resources and there are those really good people out there that are willing to come and help you and surely do care. Everybody from, you know, Salvation Army to you name it. I thank them all. I thank every one of the groups that helped us, every one of the fire departments, everyone that was there, that you can get those resources, and people are willing to help each other in a time like this. and it does work where people do come together and really do care. And we in law enforcement see so much of the negative all the time, but this was an opportunity where I've seen so many good people that had so much good intentions and wanted to come and help Beaver Dam and wanted to come here. There were people that were taking days off to come to help Beaver Dam. There were departments that were willing to pay people overtime. All the county resources paid people overtime. They did whatever they could to help us. They were all there to say, hey, what can we do? What can we do to help you? And that's nice to know that we have people out there that care and are willing to come help us if we ever have something like that. And I surely would return that to any other community that would have an incident like this. I would be able to give my resources from the city of Beaver Dam to help them out with some tragic incident that they would have.
Thank you guys very much for joining us today.
Yep.
Thanks for having us.
Again, Sergeant Eric Smiedema and Beaver Dam Police Chief John Kreitziger. Programming note, next Tuesday, which would be exactly 1 year from the incident we've been talking about today, our guest will be Beaver Dam Fire Chief Alan Mannell, who will deliver his Village Glen Apartment Render Safe Operation presentation for us. He's been traveling to a few communities to actually deliver this presentation, and this will be an opportunity for him to notify the public of exactly what they went through in this 11-day ordeal and answer a few of our questions as well as at that time. So please make note of that. Again, that'll be 12:35 on Tuesday. We'll be streaming that in audio and video. You'll be able to find the audio and video of today's program with the Beaver Dam Police Department at dailydodge.com. We want to invite you to check out our website. And once again, thank John Kreitziger and Eric Smiedema for joining us on the program today.
You're welcome, anytime.
That is going to do it for today's Community Comment.
Surgery. You didn't put that on your bucket list. But with advanced general surgeons and the latest minimally invasive technology, Beaver Dam Community Hospital helps you resume your pursuit of happiness with quicker recovery and reduced pain and scarring. BDCH provides